Welcome back to the Shadow Business Guest Podcast. I have a very special guest with me today, and she is a psychic business strategist with 17 years of experience in business, marketing, and sales. And she channels new paradigm business codes. I am so excited to hear more about this, and you might be as well. And she is calling all the way from Brisbane in Australia. And I love this so much. I'm here based in the Netherlands, and we get to have this connection here all the way across the world. She reads the energetic blueprints of global businesses that are here to shift the frequency of the entire planet. There you go. We are crossing half the planet here through soul mission work and highest potential timelines. Welcome to the podcast, Danikah Rose.
Thank you, Sarah. That was like such a good introduction and literally covered all bases. I'm so grateful to be here in service to you, your community, to anyone that's like listening and finds this no matter when they find it. So
Yeah.
thank you first for having me, because these opportunities to speak to Shadow, to speak to what it is that we actually go through our authentic expression as business women and entrepreneurs. It's like a whole other level out there when you're also the face of the brand, and we've got
Yes.
marketing and all of these elements to discuss. It's so exciting.
Yes, it's like we're juggling all these roles in the conscious, in the subconscious, and everything. So, before we actually dive into the first question, would you mind sharing exactly what it is that you do with your clients? So, how does a typical client experience look for you, or when do people get into working with you? Could you share a little bit about that so they know who's talking to them today?
Oh, I love this. Thank you. So, most people will come to me from a one-to-many approach, and
Mhm.
that's through the podcast, masterclasses, just the teaching style in general. And so, when I'm informing the audience about new paradigm business codes or authentic marketing and self-concept and identity work, they can see themselves in parts of that. And that's when they're responding to me and the invitations that I put out. Sort of down the human design line, I'm also a projector 4/6. So I lean heavily into, this is the information, take what you need and leave the rest. And also, this is a plethora of amazing connections that I have in my network where we can all dabble. Predominantly, I focus on one-to-one work, and I also do masterminds twice a year. And in recent years, I've also done retreats because my background is actually hospitality and events
Ooh.
management, scaling franchises and scaling hospitality businesses. So that's really where I started. And I've owned a few of my own cafes. I've had a fitness franchise. So it's not just, oh, hey, let's do some business consulting. It was, this is my brand face to face pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're transitioning to an online brand, and we also have 5 children in tow.
Yeah.
So that adds a whole other aspect to it. But
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur, my firstborn is 12 years old now, and that's when I first had my own business that had nothing to do with other blueprints. And it was just, where am I actually expressing my energy and what wants to be said through me at this time? And it was actually not the psychic strategist. That's
Mhm.
only been birthed in the last 4 years.
Yes,
Mm.
amazing. Oh, we will probably get to talk a little bit more about that when you have started this business that you're in right now. And this is so interesting also to hear. And I don't know a lot about human design. I'm sorry, I cannot really respond to that in the right and correct way. But I think I understand what you're saying. So every time someone is saying it, I'm like, oh, yeah, could be me. I have no idea.
I love it.
So what we want to do on the Shadow Business podcast, and everybody, just for also my listeners, right? Everybody who is on the guest podcast has filled out an application form, and I loved yours, and it was, for me, it felt like there was a lot happening behind the scenes, or maybe even also before the scenes, so to say, that has really made you do whatever it is that you're doing right now. And I was thinking what you were saying about the hospitality sector was, oh, actually, when I'm thinking of people in hospitality, because I was I have, for instance, in my life, organized 1,000 events. So I know how to, give people a good time. But actually, I was a people pleaser. I'm not sure if you were as well. But that was how would you? What attracted you to hospitality in the first place? Do you know?
It was the hustle.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
the
right.
proving of
Yes.
self. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And it did play into the shadow, the integration of like, and like you similarly, kind of like, let's get out of the hustle. But then what happens after that, when all the noise dies down and when we're not pushing from pressure, and
Yeah.
if we just go deeper into what that actually shows up as, it's extra hours, it's
Yes.
underpaid.
Yeah. It
It
is.
is, like you said, people pleasing, saying yes to absolutely everything. So a lack of boundaries. We are exhausted because people are then expecting even more from us because we're continuously saying yes to things. And then we're kind of losing our sovereignty in a lot of ways because
Yeah.
our decisions are then based on how are other people going to respond if I make this choice that actually just serves me.
Oh, God forbid if you would do something that would just serve you, right? Yeah. And so I'm sorry. So for everyone who's watching the YouTube, my cat is currently in its people-pleasing phase, as to say it. I'm sorry for the disturbance, Danica. I hope you're all right. I don't think there's any noise coming, but I mean, he's just finding his way, right? No, I mean, if we could take an example from cats, right? They just do whatever they want. Yeah, but
And they're very spiritually attuned as
yeah,
well, so they're so high frequency and they love to be around energy as well. So I'm not
yes,
surprised, and I
yeah,
also, there's no noise coming through.
no.
Everybody watching is like, oh my god. And the cutest cat, by the way, for those listeners. I love it so much.
Yes. Well, he knows it's important what we're talking about, so he's just having a little listen in.
And
Uh,
I think there's nothing better than that raw, authentic, the less editing that we do of self and the
yeah.
less positioning as perfectionism and
Yes.
masking and trying to tape up and band-aid and
Yeah.
sticky tape all our crap together.
Yeah.
Excuse my language, but it
Hmm.
is. We're just like, okay, how do we polish this? How do we make that perfect? How do we
Yes.
position things so that they're absolutely all of the time? And this perfectionism that comes out in my shadow as well has slowed me down so much in the
Yes.
past. And it looked like not making decisions quickly enough. It looked like, again, like, if I make this decision, then what's going to happen? I'm just going to procrastinate on that for a little while longer,
Yeah.
because then if I fail or
Yeah.
if I'm super successful, and I actually have a lot of clients that deal a lot more with the fear of success
Yeah.
than the fear of failure,
Yeah.
because they have no idea, like, if I become this and if I actually have this 100K month and if I actually do that, then who will I be? Especially when
Yes.
it comes to any mothers that I've worked with. Like,
Yeah.
we have this human conditioning that says you have to choose one thing. You've got to pick your lane.
Yeah.
You have to niche down. You
Yeah.
need to cut, paste, edit. And hello, like, this podcast is the pure example of why not to do that and how
Exactly.
best we can serve the world through just showing up as ourselves.
Yes. And this is really, kind of the expert trap, right? That many people fall into. And the problem with this is that well, I don't have to explain this to you, but just also for the audience is that people sense your energy. So if you're convicted in your message, if you're convicted in your expert status, if you're convicted in your niche, even if it's, if you're really niched out and you really understand, yes, this is what you really feel it from all of your cells, then yes, you will be successful. But if you're just doing something that I don't know, Alex Hormozy is telling you to do, you're not. It's not going to be convincing and interesting for people to buy. So that's where it goes wrong. So for you, Danica, what was for you? Do you think your biggest shadow that you have faced in your business, and what has it caused? Let's just stay with the cause first, and then we're going to the solution second.
I love this. And I'm so quick to jump to the solution. So Sarah's
No,
reeling me
please.
back
Yeah,
in here.
exact. No, because I
I
feel I
love this.
feel
We
you
do.
might, but it's I'm the same. So it's also I'm also telling myself. So let's just talk about just a little bit the bad parts, and then we can go to the good.
Yeah, and I think it's also really good to get down into the nitty-gritty of what
Yes.
that the grunginess actually looks like when you are at rock bottom. And
Yeah.
it happens so often. I think again, a lot of people are bypassing this part of the process. They
Yeah.
want to take a framework from someone else, and this the rhetoric of I did this and
Yeah.
you can too. It's
Yeah.
very old paradigm business. These are
And it's,
parts of the
yeah.
blueprints. They're fading out now.
It's actually and it's also such a shame, right? Because if people are saying, "Oh, well, if she can do it, I can do it too," and then you can't, and then you think there's something wrong with you, and then you actually stop, for instance, working with coaches because you're thinking, "Yeah, you know what? It's not for me, or this person is bad, or whatever." So I think it's really also hurting the industry, but that's just a side note. Yeah.
It's a very deep side note, and I think a segue to about a 4 hour long podcast that I'm sure you and I could hold.
Yeah. Yes.
and, and I would say, when I look at the shadow, when I look at the subconscious events and expressions that have played out within my own actions,
Hmm.
because that's really where it's going. It's like the habits that we have throughout the day are created from the micro actions and the
Yeah.
smaller moments, which are then actually the result of the decisions that we make. And the decisions are being based on our filters and our schemas, the way we see the world. So our lens. And if we have this rose colored lens on, which is, hey, let's compare ourselves to so and so's marketing and let's go and have a look at what my father did because he used to hustle hard. So if I do, that equals my abundance. So that's the hard workers paradigm, which is one of my shadows that I had to work through as well. And that was really, hey, you're 14 years old now. If you want a phone, you need to go out and get a job. If
Yeah.
you want to do your music industry work, you need to help pay for this. If you want to have your school camp, you need to chip in. And we all know and forgive and love that our parents do their absolute best to raise us with whatever resources and access to information they have. So I always make that energetically clear in the space of all of the galaxies when I say anything about my mum and dad, because they too had 5 children and did an amazing job at raising all of us. However, there's still these parts that you take on as if it's your own belief. And
Yeah.
until you get awareness and you keep seeing the loop, and you're like, hang on, how did I go from having this experience with that person and that job and that client and that role? And then I step into another thing and it's the exact same pattern
I
playing
know.
out. There's
I know.
I am the common denominator
Yes,
here.
yes, you are. And so you've written, and I would like to point this out if you don't mind in the podcast, you've written out a beautiful story about how you're being forced to be the provider very soon in your life. And you've also learned something very early on from money wounds that lives through generations also in your family. And would you care to share about that in the podcast on, because we have everybody that I speak to has a different theme, so to say, in their lives, and how it has influenced you at first and how you have kind of dissolved it through whatever method.
I think if there were a label to gift to that shadow would be scarcity.
Yeah.
But it was so much more complex than that because the deeper I went into the energetics of it
Mm.
and I looked really far down into like, oh, if my ancestors were this, and then this is what happened with the bloodline of my family
Mm.
on both sides for my parents,
Interesting, both
and I
sides.
both sides,
Yeah.
and I became psychically aware of these experiences as I advanced in spirituality.
Yeah.
But then when we're learning something spiritual, we want to kind of apply it to the
Yeah.
practical. We'd love to see the results in the 3D, and it's not always a smooth process because there's certain lessons to be learned
Yes.
and like things to be kind of integrated as we go through that.
Yes. And so, and what was that for you? So scarcity, and how did you actually turn that around? How were you able to turn that around for yourself and maybe also actually your families, maybe even your brothers and sisters?
I love that you brought it up because I'm actually the kind of the catalyst within the family.
Yeah, of
Oh,
course.
Danikah has money. She's a snob. Oh,
Okay.
Danikah owns nice things. Now she's XYZ. And I thought to myself, but the people that I'm surrounded by and the clients that I serve, and there's people that own 5 properties, and there's people that own $5 billion
Yeah.
properties, and there's people that have these entire portfolios of 22 apartments, and yet they're in my vortex, and I'm going to high-rise buildings and having dinner with my bosses, and I'm 19 or 20 years old, and I'm on a fat paycheck because I stepped into a role, realized that one of the managers was stealing from the CEO, created a case over 3 months, and then
Wow.
presented it to the CEO. And then I became responsible for 25 staff and a
Amazing.
60-hour work week when
Yeah.
I was 19 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's this kind of juxtaposition that was playing out. It's like, hey, look at all this affluence, look at the wealth, look at this abundance, look at the things that these people have inherited or worked hard for or been a part of. They've co-created it. Some people were doing this very solo and they didn't actually have a lot of support, which I pedestaled
Yeah.
in some aspects. As a young woman, I went, wow, look at what they've achieved without any support and people around them. But the awakening really came through these, for me personally, was the birth portals. And with each child came these new like ways of seeing the world. And it completely shocked me. Even talking about it, I still feel shock in my human system. And I go, it was just so profound. And I have 5 children, and I've gone through all of these initiations every single time, made
Yes.
into mother, made into mother. I've never stayed just mother, but I think
No.
it's been almost this like process that had to happen to rewind and then accelerate forward. And my whole life has been that pulling of the arrow back.
Yeah.
So much resistance, so many horrible things happening, and a lot of stress and pressure and tension. And then it just releases. You surrender, you let go, you become more aware, and you don't resist any of the evolution. And it just can fly off into the wind. And then I end up on this trajectory where the most incredible things happen. And then there's that shock of that. And
Yes.
that's where these shadows played of inner critic. You don't deserve this. I don't think this is really meant for you. You should slow down now, because what if you burn out again? Maybe you're hustling too hard and you've got all the opinions and comparisons. And the advice, the tip that I could get, that if anyone's listening, nodding their head saying, oh yeah, that sounds a little bit like me,
Mm.
cut out the noise,
Yeah.
turn down the volume,
Yeah.
and reduce the consumption. And that is really the key to unlocking all of these shadows within. Was just, if I'm not distracting myself and I'm not suppressing, which was me in 2016. I drank wine almost every single day, and it was social, and it was just the wind down, and it
Yeah.
was just in the bath, and just when I'm cooking dinner, and just when I get home, and just
Hmm.
all the time. And then my my dad was on a video call with me one day, and he said, you just got back from the shopping, what's all the wine for? Because I'm on a FaceTime, we live long distance. And I was like, oh, that's just mine for the week. And he said, that's really unusual. And he questioned it. And then I went, oh my God. And I just stopped cold turkey, because that's my personality. I was like,
Yes.
yeah, just cut that off right now. Like, what am I doing? And then the channeling, the
Yeah.
poetry came back, the singing, the songwriting,
Because
like
you
all of the
quit
inner
drinking.
child. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Interesting. I also stopped drinking alcohol actually almost 3 years ago, and it has really changed actually a lot. And it's the same with me. I was also drinking each day, and and yeah, I saw a commercial about how it causes 7 kinds of cancer, and then I thought, okay, what am I doing? And then I also stopped cold turkey. And people are asking me, why have you stopped? I'm like, why are you still drinking? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's and so I love what you're saying because I am child free. I don't have children. I'm 40 years old, so it's also probably not going to happen as well. And that's what I want. But it's so interesting what you're talking about with every child, that there was a new portal. Could you share a little bit more on that? How that has what what has really changed, and maybe also with each child, and how you actually you it feels like you got back to yourself through them. Is that true?
Absolutely. I'm nodding in agreement with that because it was a remembrance of the way that I actually desired to show up in the world without the fakeness. And a lot of that had to do with me taking radical responsibility for the next generation that I am taking a devotion to raising,
Yeah.
not playing in any old blueprints of the family, the ancestral lines. With my first child as well, it had a lot to do with the transformation through birth trauma and
Yes.
being a little bit blind to the medical system and kind of, again, lack of boundaries.
Yeah.
The sovereignty piece hadn't activated yet. I didn't have the discernment because I blindly followed, oh, everybody else is doing this, so that must be what we
Yeah.
do when we have a baby. And it didn't really work out favorably for me. However, it also led me to then hire a doula the next time and have an absolutely epic pain-free water birth
Yeah.
of my daughter, who's now 10 years old.
Hmm.
And I came out of that experience about 6 months later and started the separation with their father because there was a lot of awakening that happened. You hit that sort
Yeah.
of 25 years old and you say, okay, this is actually not okay. I am not actually safe to express. I don't get opinions. I'm suppressing with alcohol. I'm doing a lot of
Hmm.
things that are not actually my soul's desires. And when I do that, there's repercussions, there's condensation, there's like all of these like other things that were happening, coercion and whatnot. And I love that version of myself who had the tenacity
Yeah.
and who had the courage to actually stand up for that catalyst and that light bulb moment, which was, wow, would I actually like this for my own daughter? And that's
Exactly.
how she changed my
Yes,
life.
I can imagine many mothers of daughters have this, because they're such a mirror, right? And but a mirror, but also just okay. So that you're thinking, okay, so yes, exactly what you're saying. Do I want my daughter to go through this? No. Okay, I'm going to change my life. And so leaving a partner obviously is gut wrenching. It's really difficult, especially if they are the father of your children, right? You actually kind of, for the children, you want to stay together, but if it's hurting your heart, they also don't want you to stay together, right? In the end, maybe when they're young, they just, simple, let's go. Yeah, you belong together. But now that they're older, they probably appreciate it more. And also, when you're 25, you're actually fully cognitively, how do you say that? Developed. So
Developed.
yeah. So, and that's also a perfect moment to make really important decisions because you're done, right? For the first part of your life, at least. And then
Yeah.
it's all decline from there.
And it's even a little bit like there's no like shame anymore that I carry around being the young mom and making
Oh, of
these
course
rash
not.
decisions. And I do know that that was also a shadow that needed to be
Yeah.
integrated. That
Yeah.
actually was a massive part of the inner critic. Why did you do this? You haven't traveled, which I did anyways. It was just the inner critic that was even telling me things that were not even true. I've
Yeah.
been on over 55 flights now or something in my life.
Hmm.
I've been international since way back. Like
I
it's just
know.
been a part of me. I'm the only one in my family that was overseas for all of those years.
Yeah.
Yet
Yeah.
my brain was still telling me, you haven't done enough.
Yeah.
You haven't achieved enough. And I was I bought my first house when I was 21. Like I've done
Amazing.
some pretty crazy things in my life.
Yeah.
And then and like you said, you're 25, you either choose as well to change with disdain and resentment and resistance. But at that time, I was already off the alcohol. I was so
Yeah.
empowered in my channel and I went very into my spirituality. And it really did close out that cycle very quickly because I
Yeah.
just decided and everything unfolded in such a finessed way. Like, I'm so grateful for how much pain was experienced, but in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
And to have the awareness that I did, I'm deeply proud of that version of myself. And there are also moments where I look back to forgive because I could have handled it so much differently.
Well, and that's
And
this is the thing exactly I would like to explain also to the audience for a second is that you can think, being the inner critic, which is really a big shadow, and it mostly happens to women. Are you the eldest daughter for or not? Oh, second. Well, okay.
second.
But this usually happens a lot for eldest daughters, but if your older brother or sister isn't taking up that role, then you might. So that I mean that could also happen to second children just as well, right? So maybe you recognize. I see you smile, so maybe you recognize it as well. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so there you go. It's not always that black or white, but it's usually that's a little bit how the system works. Because I'm doing a lot of systemic work, family constellations, all those things. So those things also matter. But when you're having that inner critic, doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter how hard you work, doesn't matter how much you travel, doesn't matter how much money you make. The inner critic doesn't care about what you do. And the only way to beat it is through shadow work, is to actually look at the so-called bad parts, the ones that you hide subconsciously, and that you're actually kind of hiding from yourself in the first place, but most of the time also from others. And this is why this work is so important as well, because it doesn't matter. I know people who make millions who are very unhappy, and because of this, because they have not worked on that. So it doesn't actually really matter what you do, but you have learned this through your own experience. And so, what would you say to people who have this inner critic, who recognize themselves in your story? What would you say to them to do first, so to say? What is a practical tip you can give them, what you have done or what you would have done earlier in the process that could really help them forward?
I think do not sleep on rewinding the story and with radical honesty and really auditing and assessing what actually went on,
Yeah.
not from the wound of, well, this is what that person did to me, and
No.
this is what. And, I started a lot of this work around the time when Byron Katie came to the forefront in the personal development
Yes.
industry. Human design started kicking up around 2014 as well, with the old blueprint of human design. There's new
Hmm.
blueprints as well that have been activated there, which is so exciting. And I only dabble in it briefly. Most of my work with my clients is around the self concept and the identity,
Yes.
but we don't know the choices that we're making for the future version of ourselves that doesn't yet exist
Yeah.
if we haven't actually assessed and taken a screenshot essentially of, here's the capture of what actually went down,
Yeah.
and here's the parts that I haven't yet forgiven or taken responsibility for, and here are the most immediate actions that I desire to take right now. And that creates the momentum and the safety and the self trust, because when you do what you say you're going to do, even I'm going to start drinking more water. For some
Yeah.
of us, we also power through 8 hours of smashing out a launch plan, and we do these things when we're not eating,
Yeah.
and then our blood sugar starts to dip and we go, oh, I feel woozy, did I have, and it's just really coming back down to the basic foundation of self-care, and am I respecting and loving this vessel that's carrying me
Yeah.
through all of these integrations in life? Is my body actually feeling activated, and am I listening to my soul, to myself, and
Yeah.
to my senses?
Yeah.
And then taking action based on, well, if these are not my desired outcomes in my current reality, the present moment is still technically the past manifest now.
I love
So what's
that.
going to happen next?
Yes. And it's so because I think also maybe you agree with me, but I feel like sometimes I feel like, oh, this person actually really wants to change some things, but they think they're too late. It's it's done or something. I don't know what people think, but it's just like sometimes for me personally, I feel a little bit silly. I left a really well, it was not really a job. I did it as a freelancer. I was an interim manager. I was a politician, quite serious jobs, right? And then I turned business coach, and which is considered less serious. And I do remember in the beginning, but it went away quite quickly. But I was thinking, ooh, am I too old for this? I was 35. I mean,
I love this because I used to be in like musical theater when I was a child, and I did a lot of like music industry stuff, and I studied in uni for about 12 months and went, yeah, this isn't for me. Because at the time I was actually too young for it.
yeah,
Everyone else was 25 to 30
yeah,
that they were doing creative industries, and there was a massive gap in the social aspects of what that looked like and the expectations on an 18-year-old to be doing
yeah,
drugs and
yeah,
all the other things that come along with the music industry
yeah,
and university. So, it wasn't for me at the time, but and I just bring this story to maybe relate to the opposite side of the
yeah,
spectrum. Intuitively, I feel like that is also, am I too early? Am I too
yeah,
late? And I think perhaps this has also come up because a lot about new paradigm codes, and I know that you're very intuitive, time doesn't exist,
yeah,
but actually embodying that is a different
yeah,
story. That's
yeah,
that's a new story to take on because a lot of our programming is societal, it's systemic, it is patriarchal, it is consumerism, it
yeah,
is comparison, and the subconscious is basically wired in a certain way that if we're not aware of that program, and I always equate it to a computer hard drive
mm,
because you can add gigabytes, you can add RAM, you can add extensions, but you can also take them away. So over our lifetime, we've had all of these memory cards and USBs and floppy disks, and the parents are shoving things in, and our teachers and our
yeah,
workplaces, and everything is filling up this hard drive.
yeah,
And I really take it quite, I embrace it now when I get to actually take out that piece of information and observe it,
yeah,
and I witness it. And then I either choose consciously to put it back or I just let it go.
yeah.
And it
Delete it.
creates the capacity, it creates the spaciousness to observe the environment in a different way. And part of that coding that is very ingrained in society in general, especially Western society, is that there's a clock on this, there's wrinkles on this, there's not enough wrinkles on that, there's skin color and races and religion and all of these programs that are being pushed on us to suppress us as a society, which is just part of a bigger agenda. And we won't go all the way in there,
Yeah,
but it is a part of how can we control this society based on the way they view themselves. So my encouragement to anyone that understands this level of expression is, do you really want to continue believing that time exists and that you need to rush, or that
yeah,
you're too soon? Or can you really expand the way that you even breathe to
yeah,
take in more information that is not actually in relation to how quickly you can get something done and how
exactly.
fast you can achieve that
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah. And human beings are very programmed to, not do too many things. Right, right. So we all, I think, I think it's good in a way that we try to do things as efficient as possible. That's also why beings still exist, obviously. But there's also limits to that, right? So as the conversation that we had just before this was about, the industry and saying, okay, yeah, I did this within 12 months and I've done so well, blah blah blah, and then people it's messing up other people's timelines because they think, oh well, I did it in 14 months, so I'm less. No, it's not like that. Exactly. Also with the comparisonitis that you spoke about, and I completely agree with you that even though I do believe, we live in a collective, it's a society, we're living together all on the same planet, etc., etc. But kind of the rules, are they really applying to you? That's the question, and especially also for women, and even more so with mothers, is that yeah, I mean, I feel like women should actually make 10 times more than men because they work so much harder, also beneath the surface, and that's just not being talked about enough, because obviously the people, that was also one of the reasons why I was in politics, because I thought this is unfair. And so if that's the case, then you're totally fine with choosing your own path and let that inner critic just, whatever, drown, go away, and just say, you know what, I'm choosing me, and there's nothing wrong with that, because actually by choosing yourself, as you said, within your family, you have also inspired probably family members to also stand up for themselves, to also, and then, you cannot pour from an empty cup, right? So if everyone's cup is filled, that's how the world will remain and slash become a better place. I totally believe in that, and I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah, and I'm nodding to a lot of it because I think that wealth in the hands of women is one of the underlying values that I have within my business.
Yeah,
Even energetically, I only serve women exclusively. There's a few other aspects at play, like my sacred divine union and keeping my energy closed
yeah,
off to actual men. And although, energy of its in and of itself is genderless, there's still parts that play into biology, which I'm very
yeah,
well aware of, that I don't dabble in that
yeah,
aspect. And I do think that women distribute wealth in a very different way. It's very communal,
yeah,
and it has a far greater ripple effect
yeah,
depending on the intent. And the
yeah,
intentions are very different when it comes to how women and feminine energy distributes the wealth and pours it back into the land, so to speak.
yeah,
And then we also know how to water it and weed out what is not necessary based on intuitive hits and the way that we process things through this alchemical process that happens when we observe an environment through our intuition,
yeah.
which biologically is happening because of our the way that we're actually structured on a
Yes,
genetic level.
I
And
love that.
yes, so there's so much more that we could
Yeah.
say, I'm so
Yes.
sure.
Well, that's it. And when you're looking at the time, I'm looking at the time, and I think with these words, I would like to really thank you for being on this podcast. It has been, I feel like I'm meeting my soulmates from everywhere around the world. I've spoken to a person from Spain, from the Philippines, from Poland. I mean, and it's so strange that now it feels like we have all these pins of the shadow business guests, and they're everywhere on the world. And of course, we have different approaches and a different ways, but in a way, we all feel kind of the same. And I love that idea of collective understanding and just really taking good care of ourselves and the people around us. So thank you so much for being a part of this, Danika.
It's totally my pleasure.
Thank you. And I'm going to close the episode now. Thank you so much for listening. This was a guest podcast series, and there's more guests coming up the upcoming weeks. It's the first season, really, of the guest podcast. I'm so excited to do this. Every Tuesday, there's a new episode, and there's also a regular episode every Thursday. So thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, and you can follow Danikah in the link that I put in the show notes so you can see all about her work and everything she does. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next week.